Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Live with Chef AJ. Have I got a wonderful guest for you today? She is beautiful. You might remember her from the television show Baywatch. She's not only an actress, but she's also an athlete. She's an animal activist, and she's the co-host of a wonderful podcast, of which whose t-shirt I am wearing today. It is called Switch for Good, which she co-hosts along with Dotsie Boych, and she's going to talk a lot about that. Please welcome Alexandra Paul. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me.
Hi, AJ. And you were on our show, and we've replayed your episode because it was so great and had so much wonderful information on it, on the benefits of a plant-based diet, eating a lot of potatoes. Dotsie and I have tripled our potato consumption because of you. Truly, it's amazing.
That is certainly good news, and I like to hear that. And I love that you had so nice. I've been on a lot of podcasts. I've never gotten a swag bag, so thank you so much.
You're welcome.
That's so great. So I'm sure people know you from the show Baywatch, and we will talk about Hollywood because I love to talk about disordered eating in Hollywood because I've had so many clients, not as, maybe not as famous as you, but people that were striving to be models and actresses who were thinner than me, where the director said, oh, you have to lose 5 pounds because when the camera hits you here. So I'd love to hear all about that. But first, I want to talk about what you're doing right now because you care so deeply for animals and you've dedicated this part of your life to it. So let's hear about this part of your life first.
Oh gosh. Okay. Well, are you talking about COVID-19 times? Because I'm still busy, but generally this year.
No, just what you've been doing since you're not a regular on a television show now. I'm sure you still act, but like with the podcast, with your athleticism, all that stuff you want to.
Got it. So thank you for talking about my podcast, Switch for Good, with vegan Olympian Dotsie Boych. She and I decided to team up and create a podcast that talks about the benefits of a plant-based diet, but also with a bent towards disordered eating, because so many Americans have disordered eating, and both Dotsie and I struggled with eating disorders in our I in my teens, she in her 20s. And I in my teens and 20s, because 12 years. And I still have that mind. Dotsie seems to have really overcome. She's my role model because she's actually really normal with food now. And I still struggle with a mentality that has a little bit of an ex-eating disordered person mentality. But so I love helping animals, and I work a lot with Direct Action Everywhere, which is a nonprofit that believes that animals shouldn't be exploited at all. And I've done a lot of investigations into chicken farms, calf farms, been into geese farms to do a peaceful civil disobedience, been arrested a couple times in the last year for animals, trying to get the word out that it's just not right that we exploit animals in this way. And especially in the time of COVID-19, it's especially important for us to know not to just point a finger at China and the way they capture and kill animals, which is the reason this virus started, but that our factory farms are breeding places for the next virus. And maybe even more importantly, antibiotic resistance, because 80% of our antibiotics are put into this livestock to prevent them from getting diseases because they're confined in such a horrible, dirty, cruel, stressful manner. And I also want to tell people that for those of us who care about our weight, antibiotics are also fed to animals to put weight on them. So it's important that you eat the healthiest food possible and keep your health as your body as strong as possible, so you don't have to take these antibiotics, which can end up screwing your system for a long time and put weight on.
Absolutely. I just want to read some of the nice comments. Wow, Alexandra Paul, exclamation mark from Gina. She's so beautiful. She is. So I love what you're doing to help animals. The podcast Switch for Good, it's really good podcast. And one of the things you seem to really concentrate on is dairy free.
Yeah. Yeah. Switch for Good is a foundation that Dotsie started because she is an Olympian. She won a silver medal for the United States in track cycling in London at the London Games. And you know, the Olympics are pretty much owned by milk. There's all these milk does a body good commercials and things. And she, as a vegan athlete, it really infuriated her that this message about milk doing a body good was being stolen by the Olympics, and pretending that the reason that Olympic athletes are strong and able is because they drink milk. Well, no, that is not. It's despite their childhood of drinking milk that they are good athletes. So she started Switch for Good, which brings together lots of athletes and non-dairy drinkers and non-cheese eaters, of people who believe that to be strong and healthy and to be able to perform at your physical best, you actually need to ditch dairy. And that's the Switch for Good Foundation. And our podcast is an offshoot of that. We talk a lot about ditching dairy. If anybody has questions about dairy and why dairy isn't healthy for you, I'd be happy to. I'm not a doctor, but AJ and I will be happy to talk about it. Right, AJ?
Absolutely. Dairy is healthy if you're a baby calf trying to grow to 800 pounds in a year. But other than that, unless you're the baby calf, yeah, absolutely. And I think that is such, you know, when a lot of times people won't make all the changes we've made, and they may never will. But I think it's such an important first step for everybody to take. There's no reason for humans to drink milk of another species.
It's so interesting because we are the only creatures who drink milk past weaning. Especially, and it's even no other creature drinks milk of another species. And Dotsie and I laugh about this because if I were, was lactating, and I went to my neighbor and said, "Would you like some of my breast milk? Here's a cup of it." They would go, "What? No." And that's human breast milk. Yet we seem to be completely fine with drinking the breast milk of another species. So we've really been and whitewashed. There's been a brainwashing about milk. It's incredibly unnatural and not at all right for us. The whole protein, fat, sugar content is completely different in cow's milk than it is in human mother's milk.
It's absolutely one of the most bizarre phenomena. And it really is, like they say, a triumph of marketing over science, because historically we weren't milk drinkers of any other species. Does anybody know, like, what timeline in human history that we started doing this? Obviously, after we started confining animals, but who was the first idiot that did this, that started this all? You know,
it was probably a sexual guy who couldn't drink his wife's breast milk because she was trying to keep it for a kid. So he went into the barn and did it to the animal. I don't know, because it's that perverse.
Yeah, it is.
It really is.
It is crazy. So have you always been, I mean, obviously, you know, Baywatch, you were called to do some athletic things, but have you always been such an athlete as you were now?
You know what? I am athletic, meaning that I do athletic things, but I am not a natural athlete. I'm not particularly fast. I'm not at all skilled. Try and get me in a Zumba class, or one of the step classes. I can't even do it because I'm so uncoordinated that I don't even get a good workout. But when you're 56, like I am, and you're still swimming, cycling, running a lot, then people dub you an athlete. So I'll take that moniker. I was always found an outlet with sports because I grew up in the country, and my mother didn't allow us to have TV. So we were either outside or we were inside reading. Those were the two things we did. And that spawned my love for nature and animals outside, and my love of playing and being active and moving. So I have been an athlete. I have been athletic all my life. And I've done a lot of, after in 2004, I couldn't run anymore because of my knees. So I started doing long distance swims, and I've swum 12-mile races, 11-mile races, 14-mile races in the ocean. And I, when I say race, I mean, I'm just going at an easy pace for 6 to 9 hours. And I can do that. I'm very,
oh my God, 6 to 9, you're swimming for 6 to 9 hours?
Mm-hmm. Yes, 6 to 9. Well, at those distances, and some people do it much faster than I, but I think I would say I'm a middle to the end of the pack swimmer. I'm a very good swimmer technically, which is one of the reasons I was cast on Baywatch in the first place. And I was a junior lifeguard, but I'm not a fast person. I don't like to go fast. I'm just a, you know.
How do you swim for 9 hours? What if you have to pee? What do you do?
Oh, you pee in the water.
Oh my God.
And some people know how to pee while they swim, but I have to.
Oh my
Well,
God.
I did triathlons, the Ironman triathlon, and that took me 13 hours. And I did learn how to pee off the bike. So you kind of wait for a downhill and you kind of stand up and.
Oh my God,
You know,
that's hilarious. Where do you do a 9-hour swim? Where is there enough water to swim for 9 hours?
Oh, well, the ocean.
Oh my God.
It's the ocean. And it's like, for example, I went around Key West, which is a 12.5-mile swim. For anyone interested, it's called the Swim Around Key West. And that was just wonderful. And then 14 miles from one place along the Acapulco shore to another. I like warm water swims because when you do long distance swims, it's not really, if you wear a wetsuit, then your time isn't counted. So I don't really like to be cold. So I choose warm water swim. So I've swum in Fiji from one island to another. Yeah. 11 miles. So.
Well, that makes sense. I hate to be cold too. So how do you train for these swims? Do you have to swim every day in a pool just to get your endurance up and your?
I swim in a pool. And it's so interesting, AJ, how my mind has been changed by, I think, social media. Because I used to, before like a 11 or 12 mile swim, my 14-mile swim, I would do a couple 5-hour swims in the pool. So I'd have to be in the pool for 5 hours. I did not pee in the pool, everybody. I did get out, usually just once, just hop out, run to the bathroom, come back, get it back in. I do not pee in the pool. I do pee in the ocean though.
Yeah.
So I was able to do that without listening to anything, music, podcast, nothing. And then, so it was very Zen. It was my meditation. A lot of people meditate by sitting. I meditated by moving and just being with my thoughts and getting in a rhythm. But now I can't get in the pool for an hour without having some kind of entertainment in my ear. And I feel that is a change that I brought upon myself with the fast-paced life that we have and the constant email, podcasts, TV, whatever it is. It's so interesting.
I agree. It's hard to do just one thing anymore. But for me, who's not a natural exerciser, it helps me to do my exercise by having something to watch or listen to. And that's when I treat myself to Netflix when I'm on the spin bike. So I don't know if it's necessarily a bad thing, but I know what you mean. This downtime has given me, I've been noticing how busy that we are as humans. And that's like, wow, there's actually time to do something now, you know?
I like multitasking too, by the way, for people who have difficulty exercising, to pair it with something that is a pleasure, like a guilty pleasure. When I ride the stationary exercise bike, I tend to read nonfiction, but I read. So I have something that I'm doing. But I'm all about reading, People magazine. If that's what gets you on the bike, go for it,
Absolutely.
So, but I really like moving.
That's so great that you've always had that in you. I didn't learn to do that till I was in my 50s. Karen says, what about the chlorine effect of the pool? Because obviously you have beautiful skin and hair. Does that affect you at all?
You know what? I don't know, but I have been in pools a long time and I feel like my skin is pretty good, but mostly because I take care of it. I get facials on a regular basis and I have been in the sun quite a bit, but I always put sunblock on when I'm swimming. I don't always put sunscreen on though when I'm outside, because I just like to get the vitamin D. So I know there's mixed views. There's also chemicals in sunblock. And so some days I'll put it on and some days I won't. I don't lie out in the sun though, because I don't like not moving.
I know what you mean. I recently interviewed Victoria Moran on right after her 70th birthday, and people were saying, you have beautiful skin. She goes, I never let it in the sun. So I guess everybody's skin is different. Linda Middlesworth saying, what a beautiful, wonderful human. So
thank you, Linda.
You had mentioned you were arrested twice. I'd love to hear about that, because I would be more of an animal activist if I wasn't such a wimp, because when you have pets, you just don't want to go to jail because you wonder who's going to take care of them.
Oh, well, I have a husband.
Okay.
And we have 2 cats who are amazing, but my husband, Ian, he always knows when I'm going to go to jail or could be. Sometimes we don't advertise it ahead of time. So I just it's sort of sometimes I'll leave an envelope for him and say, if you don't hear from me by 8 a.m., then open this up and you'll know what happened to me. But if he does hear from me, then he never has to open it up. So, but yes, I have been arrested over 20 times for issues that in which I believe peaceful civil disobedience, very important, nonviolent. I'm a nonviolent person, and mostly for peace issues, but lately 4 or 5 times to bring light to animal issues. And, I have to say, AJ, as a middle-class white woman, especially a woman over 50, I don't feel afraid of jail because I am treated better. And being an actress doesn't hurt either. So to be perfectly honest, I honor your concern about going to jail maybe for your personal safety. And for your animals, you just have to ask Charles to help.
So when you've been arrested, is it part of a group usually? Like a bunch of you are getting arrested at a time?
Usually, oh yes, it's a planned arrest, mass civil disobedience ahead of time. Have I ever gotten arrested? I don't. Oh yes, I did get arrested once. There's a documentary called "Who Killed the Electric Car?" that came out in 2005. I've been an electric car driver since 1990, so a long time, 30 years. And I did protest the crushing of a beautiful electric car called the EV1, and it was documented in the documentary "Who Killed the Electric Car?" And it was just me and another woman who were in the car, and we were arrested. But we did have support around us.
So where do they take you? Like the LA County Jail? Or I imagine you don't go to prison, you just are there for a short time.
Usually when I am arrested, I'm taken to jail and held until the paper's processed. I did spend 2 days in jail in September up in Sonoma County for protesting at a duck farm. And there were 78 of us who were arrested. And it takes time to be able to see a judge. And so we were in jail for 2 days. And I actually didn't eat for 36 hours, which was pretty amazing for me because they didn't have vegan food yet, but they did provide us with vegan food later. So for the first 36 hours, I didn't eat. And it actually wasn't hard because I knew I was doing it for the animals. I did spend 5.5 days in jail protesting the Iraq War, where I was peacefully arrested alongside the Catholic clergyman and with the Catholic workers. And I was scared going in. And that was my sentence. They sentenced me because I prefer not to pay a fine because I believe that when you do civil disobedience, you need to follow through and go to jail and make the sacrifice. That's my personal belief. And so I was sent 5.5 days to jail, but that was my trial took weeks, and then so it takes time. You don't get thrown into jail and then lock and key, see you later.
Wow. Zena says, thank you, Alexandra, for your bravery, for helping animals, and for peace. You're a wonderful human being. That just sounds so scary to me, to be 5.5 days not in my bed and not with my food. And I applaud you for doing that. Do they get to the point where they kind of know you and say, oh, it's her again?
Well, usually it's different places. So no, I haven't been downtown for a while, but I was downtown protesting during the Iraq War several times. And the police, yes, they did know me because I was there a bunch of times peacefully protesting. Yeah.
Nice comment from Debbie. Quitting dairy 25 years ago changed my life. And some people are saying, yeah, it's okay. It's easy to give up milk, but not cheese.
Yeah, I was never, AJ, I'm a sugar person. So it was easy for me to give up cheese. How was it for you to give up cheese? Because I know
it was so easy because I'm allergic to milk. This whole thing, I feel like I'm a cheating vegan because I'm allergic. So I was very, very lucky. It was much harder for me to give up sugar, let me tell you.
There's a lot of people who are intolerant to dairy, though, who ate it because they were that addicted. You know what I say to people who have trouble giving up cheese? I say, you know what, give up everything else. Just give up everything else, all the easy stuff. Because it's so, from an animal rights point of view, it's so disrespectful for you to for people to take the life of an animal, not only by killing it, but by confining it for months, and then eating a little bit and then saying, oh, I'm not really interested anymore. I mean, that animal was tortured and died for you. So give up all that stuff that you don't really like and let the animals live.
Yep.
And cheese, just give yourself a little leeway with the cheese for a while and work on it. There's so many good substitutes, so many good cheeses.
Oh my God, with Miyoko now, Miyoko's Creamery and Kite Hill, you never had a, follow your heart, never been an easier time to go dairy free than now.
I'm a health coach now. I still act. I shot 2 movies last year, 3 movies last year, actually. And so ironic, but I had 2 movies lined up during this COVID, and they both they've been moved, obviously. I was supposed to be shooting right now, actually, on one of them. But I became a health coach 3 to 4 years ago because I wanted to help people who wanted to become fit and healthy and feel good about their bodies, because I had gone through such a struggle myself. And so when I help people change, like get off dairy, I encourage them to take small steps. So it means that you beat yourself up less.
That makes sense. Do you do the civil disobedience with any particular organization? Because Gina says, I'm in the Bay Area. How come I don't hear about these protests on the news? Because now, maybe you can be a role model for that. People seeing that you're willing to do it and you're not afraid. Because I don't either. I never like to see it on my newsfeed, like, hey, come here and get arrested. I did like 30 years ago. I actually did. Well, there was a difference between doing direct action and civil disobedience. I did what's called the direct action. I got up to the point where when the policeman said, if you go any further, we'll arrest you. And then I didn't, because I was living alone then with pets. And I'm like, I can't go to jail. Like,
no, you can't.
Yeah.
You can't. You have responsibilities for the animals. So yes, not everybody can, which is why I feel like I can, because I have a husband who will take over, and I have a job where I don't have to, I know when I'm going to be hired, and I spend a lot of time not working it. I as a health coach, I can sort of book my clients with some room. So I'm very fortunate like that. A direct action everywhere. Go to dxe.org. And you'll get involved with a group who does a lot of open rescues, which is going into farms and rescuing animals without our faces covered. We videotape it and we publicize it to show people that with the conditions. And so I've rescued several pigs, chickens, and calves. So wow. Yeah.
I applaud your bravery. I in my heart, I'm with you. It's just, there's just something about being confined that really scares me. Bertha has an interesting question. What do you list in the envelope for your husband to open if you don't return by 8?
Oh, somebody to call so he knows what's been going on, where I am, nice. and what I've been doing.
Good.
So yeah, and by the way, in terms of activism, I believe that there's different kinds of activism. So you are an activist right here by having your podcast and having such an amazing YouTube channel and writing your books and having your courses. So everybody's different. Some people will just donate money. Some people will write letters. So everyone is a different kind of activist. We need them all of them, the whole spectrum. We all are just as important.
Right. I'm going to stick to the kitchen for a while. We have an interesting comment from Karen when I asked about when did this milk drinking started. She writes, it started around 75 years ago in Central Europe, in a region between the Central Balkans and Central Europe. So I don't know, maybe we can.
75, it seems not very long ago, 75 years. That's just the
7,500.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's 75. Yeah. The thing that bothers me so much about dairy, and again, if people can't give it up for whatever reason right now, they can't. But I meet so many people, they go, that they're an ethical vegetarian, not realizing that of all the animal abuse, dairy is probably the worst. And it's also very sexist too, which bothers me.
It's sexist because it's about forcibly impregnating a female and then taking away her child immediately and using her to give you milk, right? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And then forcing her into slavery of giving the milk, because when an animal is pregnant, they're not nursing anymore. And so what they're doing is they're forcing the cow to nurse and then impregnating her again. People don't realize how horrific dairy really is and how many parts per million of shit, blood, and piss goes in the milk in this country, because our country allows it. I think if people really, they always say meat your meat. I'm not that I would ever eat it. I'd almost rather eat meat than dairy. Dairy's so dirty.
Yeah, the beef cattle have a much better life than the dairy cattle, for sure, both physically and emotionally. She gets her calf taken away. I don't know if you've ever seen videos, folks, of a calf being taken away from her mother. The mother is just often desperate, except for after the fifth calf or so, the mother becomes just basically inured, because she's had the calves taken away so often for the last 4 years that then they become numb. I wanted just to say something about the dairy. I myself became vegetarian when I was 14 for environmental reasons, and then after reading Peter Singer's book Animal Liberation, it became for the animals. And then in my 20s, I shed anything that, leather, wool, or silk, and any makeup that was tested on animals. But I still kept dairy in my diet. And I even knew in my 40s what was going on with dairy. And I remember very distinctly sitting on my bed watching I think it was from Mercy for Animals, a video of these farmers beating cows and calves and just doing horrendous things. And I was weeping and vocalizing alone, watching this. 5 hours later, I got a frozen yogurt. And I knew as I was doing it, and I was justifying it in my head, it looks so different when it's in those boxes in the supermarket. And so I have a lot of empathy for people who can't fully make the connection. I was so afraid to give up dairy. What would happen because of my eating disorder? I thought I would be deprived, and that it would send me back into anorexia if I took out too much of a food group. Because the truth was, I ate dairy every day in something. And the interesting thing is that when I gave up dairy, which was 10 years ago, and it's one of my biggest regrets that it was that long, that it took me that long, my relationship with food got healthier, because my values were finally fully aligned with my diet. My diet was fully aligned with my values, rather. And my relationship with food just got so much better. I mean, I haven't vomited, purged for 28 years, but like I told you, I still have this mindset about food. I just became so much more relaxed about food after that.
That's fantastic. I know what you mean about when you see a carton of yogurt or even a glass of milk, you don't see the dead animal like you do, like with a fish, a chicken, it doesn't look like the animal.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. It's all clean. It looks clean and smooth, and it just looks so far away from a dairy barn.
Right. So Mick says, unfortunately, I quit dairy after my toddler was already hooked on milk. Seriously, like she's addicted. I'm trying to decrease it slowly. Well, good for you for making those changes. You might want to read a book by Neil Barnard, actually 2 books. One is called Body in Balance, where he talks about the hormones and why it is so bad to feed yourself and your children animal products, specifically dairy. But The Cheese Trap talks about this opiate-like connection between dairy products and our brain, why it is really like an addiction, and that's probably why it's so hard for people to quit. I remember Howard Lyman, the Mad Cowboy, said it was harder for him to quit cheese than it was even to quit smoking. So
actually, come to think of it, AJ, we have Neil Barnard on our podcast this week, so you can listen to him about his book, Body in Balance. But we had Howard Lyman on our podcast about a month ago, and Dotsie brought up the fact that he gave up dairy because of you.
You're kidding.
Yes, you looked at him and said liquid meat, I think,
oh
or
God.
wasn't it because of you?
Is this? Well, I still want to listen to it. It's on your website now.
Or maybe it was it Jane? I was sure it was you, but okay. Your name comes up. in a lot of our podcasts where we talk about eating a lot of vegetables in the morning and potatoes and things
Oh,
like that, especially
that's
potatoes.
That's amazing. I love Howard Lyman. I definitely want to contact him and see if he'll do a live with me. Did your eating disorder develop before you were an actress or concurrently?
No, my eating disorder developed when I was 16, and I became a model like crazy. I became a model about a year later, and so that was just such an unwise choice because that put me even deeper in. But the truth is that what really got me to have an eating disorder in to pick that poison, because I believe we all pick different poisons according to our personality, and the pain that comes from being an alcoholic to choosing food to choosing drugs is often the same pain. It's just a different personality. And I was very much a people pleaser. So I never did drugs or alcohol or anything like that. And so food was a way that something I could control and deal with my pain that way. So my eating disorder did not start because I was in modeling or acting. I put myself into those things. I guess I needed more reassurance. I think I was so superficial, and I think a lot of us women are just raised like that unless we look a certain way, we're not okay.
Yeah.
And I needed that reassurance. I'm not proud to say that as a model, to be told that I was pretty enough to be a model. And it turned out that my bulimia, I did have the wherewithal 2 years later to go to my agent and say, I'm leaving because my bulimia is so bad. And when I stopped throwing up 10 years later, the irony is that my weight went down and stabilized. And because the poison that you pick in the beginning seems to solve a problem, but then it becomes the problem. And that's exactly bulimia, just as any addiction, just spiraled and it took me over.
Well, maybe, maybe even people watching this or through your podcast, you'll help some women. And it's not even just young women anymore. And it's even men that have this condition now, which always comes from some restriction. I interviewed Dr. Lyle on Saturday, and one of the questions was from someone who was a bikini model who had been bulimic for 21 years. And the answer was stop being a bikini model.
Yeah, I heard that. I thought it was very smart. And he was so right that we put ourselves it was so interesting. She was like me. And I went, oh my God, we put ourselves into these situations that actually make us worse. And a lot of us do that. I'm sure there's probably places which that brings up an important point, is that as a health coach, I often ask about the environment that my clients are in. For example, and I hear you say this a lot too, if you're trying to give up something, then why is it in the house in the first place? And so our environment and the people we hang out with and the things around us, the things we read, that we take in, that we watch, all are so important in terms of our health and well-being. We have to look at those, and we have control over those.
Emily's asking, what's the podcast? She co-hosts it with Dotsie Bausch, and it's called Switch for Good. So when you first developed your eating disorder, you were already lean, I'm guessing. You were never probably overweight.
No, I was never overweight, but I was about 15 years old, and I was at boarding school in Massachusetts, and the senior girls were weighing themselves. It was really odd, and they were really pretty, and I thought I looked up to them, and they would weigh themselves and they would be unhappy. And I thought, oh my God, if they're unhappy with how they look, then I must be completely not fine. And so that's how I started to be aware of how I looked and the weight and what was appropriate or acceptable, or what I should be to be a good. I just so wanted to be accepted and good instead of being my own person. And when I was on Baywatch, I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but when I was on Baywatch, the biggest lesson that I got was when they hired me. I was no longer bulimic, by the way. I don't think I would have taken that job if I was bulimic, because I had gotten abstinent the year before, 9 months before. And it was a miracle. And but one of the things I learned on Baywatch is I cut my hair very short the second season, almost as short as your hair. And what that did for me was make me more myself. And instead of trying to be a sexy, buxom, this kind of thing, it was never me. I'm athletic and direct and, kind of earnest. So instead of trying to be something that I wasn't, which the producers kind of wanted to be me to be when they cast me, I just said, nope, this is me, and went more my athletic. I started lifting weights. My body got more sinewy and muscular, and my hair got shorter. And it was so great for me because not only did my storylines get better, but I stuck out from the crowd. And I became, I was better at being who I was than if I was trying to be. I could never compete with all those other beautiful, sexy blondes on the show. So why bother?
Well,
Just be yourself.
Gina's saying she loved the haircut and still loves it. Well, at least one of your co-stars from the show became vegan. Was she vegan before?
Oh, Pamela Anderson is vegan and an amazing animal rights activist. Just amazing. I just admire her so much for her advocacy. She has a worldwide reach and has really done so much to make veganism more mainstream. She was not vegan then, or even vegetarian, but she loved animals. She would bring her dog Star to the set, and she and I had scenes. The producers put us in a scene down at Marineland, which captures animals. It's an aquarium, and I asked them to take me out of that scene because I didn't want to have anything to do, and never have wanted to in any of my movies have anything to do with captive animals or promoting it or making it look like it's okay. And the producers were really respectful, and they did write me out because they knew that I already had in my contract that all my makeup couldn't be tested on animals. So they knew I was being sincere and not a diva.
Wow, that's incredible. Wow. I think about do you watch the morning show, or did you watch the morning show?
Oh, the series with
Yeah.
Jennifer Aniston, and yes, we did watch that.
Right. And I really liked it. And, it talks about, not this won't ruin it for people, it talks about the Me Too movement. And I think about that, and I'm wondering if there'll be something similar to that, because there's so many people that have been pressured into eating disorders through these industries, show business, modeling. If everybody said at the same time, not me, no more. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because there'll always be people. But if could all of you guys unite and just tell them, just stop it already? Because, when I see actors and actresses in person, they're much thinner than they look because of the fact that the camera adds 10 pounds. So why don't they just invent a camera that makes people look like they're supposed to? It looks thinner.
Like for real. I was never, because I came from modeling, when I went to acting, it was a real relief that I didn't have to be 35, 24, 35, or whatever the measurements were, because I never was those measurements anyway. I'm built pretty straight. So these numbers that we always try to get to. So it was a huge relief that act didn't matter as much for actors. And I was, though, naturally thin. I think if I didn't really eat healthily and exercise, I might be 10 to 15 pounds heavier. But this feels like my natural weight where I set to when I'm healthy and have healthy lifestyle. But it's hard. I mean, I'm aging now, so I'm 56. I feel young, but people will say I'm middle age, which is such a weird number, but I guess technically I am. Hopefully maybe I'm past middle age, but there is pressure about, looking young, but at the same time, you don't want to look pulled either. So you don't want to I'm not against plastic surgery, but I also feel like we need to embrace aging and natural bodies. I really worry, and I don't know, a lot of people, you and I don't have children, but your audience does. And I really worry about the images that young people are seeing online that are either through pornography or all the Photoshop stuff, that they expect bodies to look a certain way that isn't even real for those actors. And yeah, for sure.
And they want everyone to be thin, and yet the food that they expect people to eat. It's like, you can't have it both ways.
You can't have it both ways, but unfortunately, I hear this from my clients. They think that actors just easily are thin, just naturally thin, and they don't have to work at it. People need, if they eat healthily, they will get to their normal weight generally with exercise. But a lot of actors, I just want to say this to everybody, don't be beating yourself up thinking actors are just naturally thin and or eating so healthily. One of my Baywatch co-stars said to me, all she ate was chicken and Coke. That's all she ate to keep her body looking.
You mean
like
Coke isn't cocaine, or Coke isn't
Oh, sorry.
Coca-Cola?
No, Coca-Cola. No, I don't, to my knowledge, she did not do that. So yeah, it's unrealistic. So her body type is really unrealistic. She had to suffer a lot to look like that.
Well, that's what I love so much about the way I recommend people to eat. And they don't believe it. Because listen, I don't think I'm naturally thin, but yet for almost 8 years, I've been what other people consider thin, eating a shitload of food, including potatoes. And I want people to know it's really possible. I mean, I had an eating disorder too, but I was fat. And that was what drove my anorexia, was just that, I wanted to be thin so desperately that I would even, starve myself. And then the bulimia came later, 6 years later, because starvation is not really sustainable. So that's why it turns into bulimia. But people can be their naturally thinnest weight. Not everybody, like you say, is going to be straight up and down. Those people are the ones that probably are going to become models. But we can be a leaner version of ourselves if we adopt the proper diet.
And even those of us who are lean, like after you came on our show, I started following a completely whole foods, plant-based diet. And I ate the pound of vegetables. I was shooting a movie at the time, actually, because remember, I would bring all my food. I would bring potatoes, I'd bring hummus, I'd bring all these vegetables like kale, collards, and carrots and cauliflower to the set. And potatoes, lots of potatoes. And I would just eat that during the day. I told Dotsie, we talked about it on our show. I lost 4 pounds that she says, you didn't even need to lose that. I said, well, I have a little bit around my waist, and it just was naturally just fell off, and I was eating a lot, as much as I wanted. Yeah.
That's amazing.
So, and I just by following your advice, reading your book, and having you on our show.
That's so cool. We Christina saying Alexandra is such an inspiring person. We had a nice comment from Linda that your message is so valuable about what we should look like. You don't have to name names, but are there certain directors or producers that were more difficult to work with, that actually would say, hey, you're fat, you got to lose 5 pounds if you want this part? Because that's what I've heard, that there are some like that.
Well, they never said it to me, because I'm tall, and because, the preference is usually not just being thin. I mean, I think curves and things are important. That's just the way most women are built, with curves. So I never got the weight thing, because I am tall, 5'10", and I'm just built pretty straight. So, but on Baywatch, they did have it in our contract that if we gained more than that we couldn't gain more than 5 pounds. Now, when I first read that, I thought, what? And then they told me, no, that's for everybody, men and women. And the reason that it is because the first season, a man, he was an Australian, I can't remember what his name was, very nice guy, but he was so happy to get the part that he partied himself 10 to 15 pounds heavier. And so they put that in the contract. And I thought, okay, well, if everybody has to follow this certain thing, then okay, it wasn't as egregious. And especially because it was inspired by a man.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder how many shows do that. We just don't know, because not on every show.
Well, but remember, Baywatch was about being in a bathing suit 90% of the time. And so that's unusual for shows, I would think.
Well, I remember when I was 19, when I was anorexic, and actually it's funny, I was the same weight as I am now. So meaning I was able to get to this weight healthily.
Oh my God, I love that.
It's so funny, because like I was able to become this weight through anorexia in 3 months and become the exact same weight through whole food plant-based diet in 24 months. But I remember when I was 19, I wrote the airlines because I was thinking of becoming a flight attendant, and they sent me back. This is before internet, so they mailed me the application, and the height weight restrictions for it back then was really like, there was like, I made it, but it was like almost nobody could. And now they've relaxed that, but I don't anticipate that really happening in modeling or show business anytime soon.
Yeah, no, you're right. I know, I think it does translate into, I think I'm digressing, but the Kardashians get a lot of flack, but I actually like the fact that they are bigger women and that they dress very provocatively in bodies that are more curvaceous and things. I just think that's a healthier role modeling than always having the skinny, skinny, skinny. We need to show diversity. And just, what makes a woman sexy? And men don't, by the way, if you're a heterosexual woman, if you want to get a man, being underweight is not, being thin is not the way to get men generally like curves. And so it's a very, Dr. Lyle would talk about that, because curves health. Being too thin means you're starving, not healthy. So we need to honor all sorts of bodies. And yeah.
It's interesting. I think that women prefer thin women than men, more
Yes.
so.
Yes, totally, for sure. I was always more aware of women's feelings rather than men, because men, let's face it, if you're a woman, they're pretty happy.
That's right.
If you're having sex with them, they're like, woo! Right?
Absolutely.
So
It's got to be so hard. I can't imagine, because I dabbled in show business. Mine was more like stand-up comedian, but I got a few parts.
You're
And
a very funny comedian. I've seen
I'm
your act on Johnny Carson.
Yeah, I'm actually going back tomorrow to stand-up comedy class because I have some extra time now. But I remember, like, even when I had an agent, it's like, oh, you'll never be leading woman. You'll always be like Rhoda Morgenstern, the best friend. I'm like, that's fine. That I was happy with that. But it just seems like such a hard industry, especially for a woman, because when you're younger, you have the pressures on you to look a certain way, and then when you're older, like, there's no parts.
Yeah, when I was in my late 40s, a producer who had hired me a lot.
A little louder, please.
Oh, sorry. When I was in my late 40s, a producer who had hired me a lot, I had worked for him often, said to me, Alexandra, I can't hire you right now because you're too old to be a mother and too young to be a grandmother. And I thought, wait, are you telling me I'm too old to be a mother? I'm 48 or something. I mean, everybody is a mother. I mean, you don't have an age limit. And then I thought, well, wait, why? Mother, grandmother, is that it? I mean, aren't there other roles and stuff? So it's much tougher for a woman. There's no doubt. Just looking at movies, you will see in most films, unless they're women-oriented films, there's really only one good part for a woman, and then maybe a friend or a waitress has a scene or two, but generally there's just one woman who has got decent parts. And it's too bad that there are movies that are considered women's movies if they have a lot of women in them. Like, hello, men, we watch a lot of movies with a lot of men in it. You can darn well watch some movies with a lot of women in it. We are awesome. In fact, if we ran the world would be a lot better.
Oh, you're not kidding me. Maybe you could start a production company and make, movies by women, for women, with women. What bothers me so much is that, like, when men age in Hollywood or even in the regular world, like, they get better with age, right? But women, no, we don't want to look at you anymore. And then you watch these Hollywood movies and the lead actor, the wife or the girlfriend's like 20, 30 years younger.
Yeah, that's happened quite a bit. I'm hoping that it changes.
It's frustrating because you're 50, what did you say, 52 or 56, you're gorgeous. By Hollywood standards, the only wife you could be is with an 86-year-old now in a movie, right?
Yeah, it's true. Luckily, yeah, no, it's so true. I want to be paired with a man who's my age, maybe a little but younger. What about a younger man? And then why not? So my husband in real life is 5 years younger than I.
All
So,
right, Cougar. Hey, you were honored by the United Nations. Will you talk a little bit about that? I love when people are
oh,
honored.
that's so
Okay.
nice of you. Yes, I also, before I became an animal rights activist, I was very concerned, and still am, but I became very concerned about the world population. In fact, that's the reason that I do not have children of my own, is that the world population has more than doubled in my lifetime. It's gone from 3 billion to almost 8 billion. And so I spoke in schools my first year on Baywatch in the early 90s. We had a break during the winter where we didn't shoot. And I, along with a friend, went to schools all around Los Angeles and spoke about the benefits of having smaller families. Back then, I spoke about the benefits of having a 2-child family, encouraging people to have 2 kids or fewer. But now the population's got so big that I spoke at the Scripps Institute of Oceanography earlier this year, I'm sorry, late last year, and at George Washington University. And I really want to encourage people to consider going child-free or having 1 kid or adopting because our population needs to stop growing essentially and actually get smaller
And that's what's
if the planet is going to survive and if humans are going to survive.
yep.
So the United Nations gave me, honored me back a couple of decades ago, actually, for my work on that. And I'm still working on that. I'm obviously not doing very well since the population's almost 8 billion and continues to rise by a million people being added to the planet every 5 days.
That's crazy. And then the fact that we're eating animals, we can't sustain that either, you know?
That's exactly right. With a larger population, we need to feed more people. And so we are wasting our planet by the land by using it to grow livestock when we could just directly and then feeding the livestock the grain that we could be just eating directly. It's a very, very inefficient system.
Very screwed up. Here's a fun question from Emma. Are there more vegan catering options on the set now compared to, say, when you did Dragnet?
Oh, you know what? I didn't even, let's see. Dragnet was with a movie I did with Dan Aykroyd and Tom Hanks and Christopher Plummer. And I don't even know if I knew the word vegan back then. It was in '86 that we shot it, so a while ago. But yes, now there are many more options because so many people are aware of the benefits of eating more plants and the problems with eating meat and dairy. So especially in Hollywood, where we're all health conscious, more health conscious, and certainly looks conscious, the caterers are amazing. They always have options. Now, I'm lucky because I usually play the first or second female lead. So they always ask me, do you have any dietary preferences? And I usually say, you know what, I'm going to bring my own food. So I bring my own food because it's better just to stay away from the craft service table completely. That way you make it easy on yourself. It's once more, AJ, I know you're shaking your head. You're nodding your head because you know that let's just not waste our willpower and and tempt ourselves by even going over to that place.
I love
bring
what you're
my own
saying.
food.
If a famous actress can bring her own vegetables and potatoes to the set, you guys can be microwaving a potato and vegetables and bringing it to your job too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And even if I go out for a couple hours or 3 hours, because I actually prefer to eat over the course of the day, I don't want to be hungry. I do not want to risk stopping at 7-Eleven and grabbing a bar when I'm eating Whole Foods, right? So I'll microwave a potato and put it in some glassware and hummus and bring it with me. That's
That's
fine.
great.
And a water bottle, it's great. Yeah. Oh, water bottles. Yeah, bring water bottles, people. Don't use plastic and just bring your own water bottle. AJ, you brought your own water bottle when you came to
Yeah,
to our show.
I got the same beat up old purple one that I've had forever.
So yeah, there's no reason to use plastic, but it's unhealthy for you and bad for the planet.
So I understand you bring your own food. That's great. But when you're on a set shooting a film, it's long hours. How do you manage to work in your fitness on those days?
Oh, well, I get up really early and I work out. Um, I always feel like, so on Baywatch, we had to be on the set at 6 a.m. and when the sun came up, so 6 or 7. And I got up seriously at 3 a.m. Gold's Gym was opened at 4. So I was able to be there exactly at 4 and work out and then go to the set. And I felt great. Hasselhoff did that too, actually, but he had a gym in his house. I didn't have a gym in my house. And then I got my own stationary bike that I put in my bedroom, and then I didn't have to go anywhere. And then I would just work out in the morning. For me, I need to work out in the morning or I'm not going to get it in.
Same
And I feel better that way. And I'm not thinking about it. And when I come home from work, grimy with makeup on and blah, 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 I just can relax or do my other business and not have to think about it.
Well, it's nice to hear that even naturally thin, beautiful people still have to do something to maintain that by eating right and exercising.
Oh,
I once had a
yeah.
client who owned a modeling agency, and she was saying that, you know, models are genetically gifted in certain ways, maybe their cheekbones or their height, but they do something. Like, I mean, there's very few people that can just, I'm sure there's going to be exceptions. There's some actress or model that can eat like crap and maintain it, but for the most part, you guys do something. You don't just take genetics at face value. You do something to perpetuate this by healthy eating and habits.
Yes. And sometimes not healthy eating, but it's easier. You've proven that it's easier to do it the healthy way. So eating like you do, as many vegetables and starches as you want throughout the day is so much easier than my co-star who looks amazing, but she just eats chicken and Coca-Cola. And I mean, that you have a much more rich, abundant life and just as beautiful a body, and you're at the weight that you want, and she's always struggling and starving. So yeah, but I just want to say that yes, people have to work at it. Let's just hope they work at it the right way. Most people in our society, because there's so many fake foods, which I call drugs, in our society, that they have to develop habits that are that help them maintain a weight. It's not something you just go do and just don't make an effort.
It's so funny because I met you literally like 3 days before I moved out of LA, and I felt like you and Dotsie. I'm like, where have these ladies been all my life? We could have been hanging out. They could have been taking my cooking class. But I was thinking, instead of craft services, maybe they could have calorie density services, like a little booth with me where like the actors come up or the producers and I explain, you know, instead of having Twizzlers, and you know, they have a lot of, they do sometimes, because I've done shows, and they sometimes do have some healthy food like fruits and crudité, but a lot of craft services is crap services. So could you imagine like having it for the healthy eater?
Yeah, that would be great. But even if they have healthy stuff, which it's too near to the unhealthy stuff, and the unhealthy stuff is, for me, a drug. And so I just need to just not even go there and try and choose and try and avoid and all that.
Couldn't agree with you more. Gina wants to know how you deal with restaurants. Don't you have lots of meetings at restaurants?
No, I don't. You know, mostly now they don't. And I think now after COVID-19, we're going to have fewer and fewer in-person meetings because people are going to realize, oh, we can just have a call on the internet. But restaurants, no. Well, when I go to restaurants, I never worry about what the other person thinks about what I'm eating. You can always get hot water and lemon if you've already eaten, and there's always something at a restaurant, usually better than what they're eating. So I never worry about it. And I actually don't talk a lot about how I eat unless someone asks, because I'm an actress, they assume I'm, eating healthy, and they're not surprised that I'm vegan.
Nice. Yeah, that's so. I just enjoyed talking to you so much. This hour has gone really fast. Do you guys have any more questions for Alexandra before we say goodbye? I just want to make a comment. Somebody said that her Donna, Chef AJ, look out for my husband Dan in your comedy class. I signed him up as a birthday gift. That's terrific. I'm in the Saturday class, and if any of you, including Alexandra, want to take stand-up comedy with me, we got nothing to do for the next few weeks. So
wow, that's so cool. Are you teaching the class? Or are you in the class?
Oh no, a real professional stand-up comedian of 40 years. His name is Otis. He's the teacher. And I used to take his class when I lived in LA. And I when I moved to the desert, I really haven't taken many. I've always kind of kept my toe in it just because I'm always in front of people. So now he's going to be doing it through Zoom, which means we can stay in our pajamas. And if there is a showcase, we can do it online because the comedy clubs are closed. So do you ever do comedy, or do you consider yourself more of a dramatic actress?
I have played in a few films, like Dragnet was a comedy, but I played the straight, the straight character in there who didn't know what the heck was going on. She was extremely not very smart. And American Flyers is a film I did with Kevin Costner, and I played the sort of lighter. It's funny, I'm very good at playing sort of ditzy airhead. On Baywatch, where everyone thinks everyone's a ditzy airhead, I actually played the serious head lieutenant. But so haven't done comedy, straight up comedy. I've done improv classes, but no comedy classes.
I love improv.
But I would, it reminds me, what?
I was gonna say improv is my favorite way of performing.
I'm sure you're terrific. I've seen you, and you're going to do great in this class, and more importantly, have a lot of fun.
Yeah. And maybe maybe I'll do a routine on veganism or something. You never know what your set's going to be until you write it. What was your most favorite memorable acting experience, maybe with a co-star or somebody you kissed, or, what do you remember the most? Like if you were writing your memoirs, that scene with,
Well, let's see. I have to say, so I've appeared in over 100 movies and television shows. And I guess it'll be 102 by the end of this year if those 2 movies go. But I really like playing bad girls and prostitutes because I've always been such a good girl. It's wonderful. So when I shot a movie called 8 Million Ways to Die with Jeff Bridges, and I played a prostitute, a call girl, and I snorted cocaine in the movie, and I'd never snorted cocaine at all. So I had long nails, and so I would practice, scooping up the cocaine and putting it in my nose and things. And one time I was driving and doing this. Very bad. There's nothing to text back in 1985. And I'm scooping up with these long nails, which were also very foreign to me. And I'm practicing with vitamin C. You can get vitamin C in granules. So I'm practicing putting it in my nose. And somebody looks over from the car next to me. And I'm like, oh no, it's just vitamin C. And I'm
oh my God, that's hilarious. That is so, Emily says that you're a very interesting person. Well, that must be fun because then you can work all these things out in your acting life, so you don't actually have to do them in your real life.
That's right. Exactly. Yes. I've been very fortunate. I've had really only extremely wonderful co-stars, frankly. And the people in Hollywood have always been really, really wonderful. Yeah. So the stories about, troublesome actors, I really haven't encountered that.
And I never hear anything bad about you. And I never, it's interesting how some celebrities unfortunately seem to be like targeted so much, and I've never read anything unkind about you. So
that's nice. You know what, AJ, I once worked with this writer who he wrote Highlander in college, and then there was a sequel to Highlander, and then he wrote The Raven, and there was a sequel to The Raven, there was a ride, and I said to him, Greg, you're so successful. How did you do it? You're young. He said, Alexandra, I'm not a great writer. I just do what people ask me to do. And when they ask me for a script in 3 weeks, I give them a script in 3 weeks. It might not be the best script, but I give it to them. And that just was so simple. It's like writing your name on the top of the SAT and you get 200 points. Just do what you're told. And so I always learn my lines, and I always show up on time. These really basic things. And I am a genius at nothing, but I will do what I say I'm going to do. And I'm consistent. And I think that's where my fortes come from, as rather than being incredible at this thing or that thing. I'm actually very average, but I just, a lot of people don't even show up for the most basic things. And I'm just saying, it doesn't have to be that hard. Just do the little things. And
well, that is great advice for everything I teach with weight loss and food addiction and cleaning up the environment. They say that people that are successful in any realm just practice the fundamentals and execute them better than anybody else. And this is great advice for life, really.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
Okay, one last question because I want to respect your time, but this is kind of a fun one. What was the best outfit you ever wore for a role, and did you get to keep it?
Let's see. What was the best outfit? Oh my gosh, that is amazing. Well, you know, I I just don't know because I'm so not a fashion plate. If you look at the Switch for Good podcast, you will see that I wear the same 4 tops over and over because being an environmentalist, I don't want to have a lot of clothes. Luckily, Dotsie is just gorgeous and she is incredibly fashionable. So she makes up for what I lack in fashion sense. But so what I really like is to be comfortable. And so I did do a movie where I had to wear a long dress through the entire movie. And it was very simple. And I really liked it at the beginning when I first started shooting. But after a month in the same darn dress, it was black and it had, it was thin. It was very simple, but elegant. But by the end of that darn movie, I couldn't stand that dress because they, you know, you do wear the same thing over and over if you're spending the entire movie running away from bad guys.
Very
And
cool.
I loved Baywatch because I knew pretty much every day what I was going to wear and I didn't have to wear heels. So that was extra, extra good.
That's amazing. Well, Zena says you do average great. And Jean says this has been such a fun interview. And I absolutely agree. And if you want to see the other half of Switch for Good, come back in 2 weeks when I'll be interviewing Dotsie, the co-host of the Switch for Good podcast. I call her Hotsie Dotsie, by the way. And then you can see another beautiful girl on this show. This is why we do it as a show instead of just audio. And come back tomorrow at 4 p.m. Pacific time. I'll be interviewing Dr. Will B. I cannot say his last name, but he is a plant-based gastroenterologist. He's known as the Gut MD, and he will be talking about COVID. We try not to only talk about COVID. This is your break from that, but this is something he wanted to talk about. So make sure you go over to iTunes and subscribe to the Switch for Good podcast. It's a great one. And thank you so much, Alexandra, for taking the time to talk to us. It's just been a lot of fun getting to know you a little bit better and hear some secrets about Hollywood and things like that.
It's been such an honor because I am such a fan of yours, AJ, and I'm excited to see Dr. Will Bolshevitz, I think is his name, because he's a great interview, and you're going to have he's going to be so lucky to be interviewed by you. Just a note that Switch for Good, it's Switch and the digit 4 good. That's the name of our podcast and the foundation.
Good to know. Well, thank you so much for all your activism.
Love you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Take care. See y'all back tomorrow. Bye, everybody.